UFC 286, Leon Edwards versus Kamaru Usman 3. Welcome to another UFC prediction and analysis video presented by yours truly here at Boxing MMA Picks. He goes by Zahn, I go by Harris as usual. Fight-by-fight breakdowns and analysis from that betting perspective specifically. We want to let you know which fights are worth the bet, which fights are worth the value, which fights to avoid, which underdog has the best shot at winning, and some parlay action toward the end of the video as well. If you have not subscribed already, make sure you subscribe to the channel here at Boxing MMA Picks. Make sure you hit the thumbs up on this video. And most importantly, we want to hear from you in the comments. Very busy pay-per-view event here. This is taking place in the O2 Arena in London, England. 15 fights overall. We have 10 of them occurring on the prelims. So let's just get right to it, starting with fight number one. We're looking at Juliana Miller versus Veronica Hardy. We see Juliana Miller there as the sizable favorite. She, of course, is the Ultimate Fighter winner. She beat Brogan Walker back in August. Likes to come forward with her jab. Really aggressive in her stand-up. She's going to look to push the pace. Her aggression, it lacks a little bit of technique, but it is a lot of pressure that could give fighters some problems. She has that clinch game. She has that grappling game. She can land takedowns. She's going to aggressively look for submission attempts. Skill-wise, I do think she has a bit to work on, but again, that pace, she keeps going. You know, she's tough. She can brawl. Really gives it her all to get the win. You can trust her to at least give maximum effort, if nothing else. And her last fight, a round 3 ground and pound TKO. So it shows that cardio. It shows that finishing ability late in the fight as well. She's taking on Veronica Hardy. This is a fighter who has not competed in 3 years. She lost to Bia Malecki, I should say, at that time. A lot of switch stance, a lot of movement, kind of light on her feet. She does fight from the outside, never really throws just one punch at a time. She is a former Taekwondo U.S. national youth champion. So, she is coming from that a bit of a background in terms of her striking. I don't love her cardio. Can't really keep up the pace that she shows at the beginning of the fight. Also a little bit sloppy. I wonder if she's cleaned up her technique with that time that she's had off. Just 2 takedowns landed in 5 UFC fights as well, which is a little side note. So don't really expect that part of her game. Veronica Hardy, simply put, I mean, she's 1-4 in the UFC. She hasn't fought in 3 years. Makes you wonder what she's doing on this pay-per-view event. I'll say this, I can't trust Juliana Miller because skill-wise, I don't think she's that good. But the UFC is clearly giving her a fight that she should win. So for Juliana Miller, her length, her pace, her cardio, her ground game, these are all factors that should be too much. Veronica Hardy only has 46% takedown defense. I mentioned some of her cardio issues as well. For all we know, Veronica Hardy, she could come back after 3 years at 27 years old, look like a completely different fighter, but I don't think that's going to be the case. So Juliana Miller, heavy favorite for a reason. Can't trust her to bet, but she should get the job done. Juliana Miller's my pick.
Yeah, this is women's MMA, so we know anything can happen in this fight. On the feet, Hardy looks like the better striker. She's definitely the better striker in this fight. My issue with Hardy is she seems to be taken down pretty easy. Like, she doesn't have the physical strength to fight off these takedowns. She doesn't really have a takedown defense. And I think in a fight like this against Juliana Miller, who wants to get this to the mat, who wants to utilize her grappling, that's her strong suit. I think she's going to get this to the mat here and drain on that energy from Hardy. And I think that's going to be the tell here in this fight. Another factor in this fight I like on the Miller side, she has that rocky heart. If she's down, like she's going to go out there and do what she needs to do. She watched the fight on The Ultimate Fighter. What was the opponent's name? But it was an opponent that she actually lost to previously. Claire Guthrie. So she lost that. That was her first loss, her only loss in MMA. And then she actually had a rematch with her on The Ultimate Fighter, down the first round, came hard the second round, came really hard the tiebreak round, and she won that fight. So she definitely has that heart. If she's down, she's gonna definitely fight for your money in this spot. So I'm gonna go with her. But like Harris, man, like, her skills are kind of low. But she does have the Her skills are low, but her grappling is good. So I think that's going to be the area that she has to use in this fight.
All right, fight number 2. Let's look at Jay Herbert versus Ľudovít Klein. Herbert, unanimous decision win over Kyle Nelson in July. Very agile, very light on the feet. He's going to keep that jab hand active. A lot of fake jabs, touch jabs, different things like that. Jabs at different speeds. Really just, mixing it up really well, and mixes in that sharp, straight hand within that. Good movement. Expect him to fight from range really effectively. He's going to have the longer frame in this one. Not only about 5 inches in height, but also about 5 inches in reach as well. A lot of in and out movement with Jay Herbert, so he keeps his opponents guessing. Combinations and his accuracy are pretty sharp. Don't forget, he legitimately dropped Ilia Topuria in their fight. So, perhaps he could have even had that fight beat had he had better IQ. So that tells you that he is a legitimate striker that's going to be dangerous for anyone. But also taking on a legitimate striker in Ľudovít Klein, who's on a 2-fight winning streak now after beating Mason Jones. Sharp hands, good boxing, good speed, good movement, a lot of in and out movement from him as well. He has a quick jab, really good combinations as well. Really nasty left high kick. That's sort of a weapon of his. Definitely loads up on that pretty well. And I mean, he's shown some concerns, right? Like in the 5 UFC fights that he's had a hard time dealing with pressure. He's shown me cardio concerns. He's shown me the inability to handle a clinch or a takedown approach against him. Again, speaking to that pressure aspect, I don't think that'll be relevant for this fight, but important to note. 4 takedowns landed in 5 fights, but that was all in the Mike Trizano fight. So even though you do see some takedown numbers there, I would say expect him to keep the fight standing. This fight in general should stay standing, so don't really look for takedowns on either side. I'm not really worried about Ľudovít Klein being in enemy territory, so to speak. Again, we know this is taking place in London, so no surprise that there's a lot of UK fighters here. Ľudovít Klein beat a UK fighter in the O2 Arena in his last fight, right? Again, Mason Jones. So, I'm assessing this fight as is. I'm not really, factoring the home crowd. I think this is a close fight, no matter which way you look at it. I don't want to ignore Jay Herbert's physical advantages. I mentioned 5-6 inches in height, 5 inches in reach. I think that's going to be key based on both of these guys preferring to strike from range. Ľudovít Klein is a bit more well-rounded with his ability to resort to takedowns, even though it's not an active part of his game. It makes me ask, like, will he actually include that the way that he did in that Mike Trizano fight? How will his 33% takedown accuracy fare against Jay Herbert's 55% takedown defense, right? So I think that's going to be the key factor in this fight. I can see a lot of stalemate on the feet. The striking styles are somewhat similar. So with that said, I can see Herbert's physical advantages giving him the slight edge there, but I can see Ľudovít Klein game planning for that takedown, sort of in a similar fashion that he did against Mike Trizano, where he was actively going for it. I think he's going to need them to win, but I also think that he's going to be able to land them with enough top control to swing rounds in his favor. I'm not confident in this at all. I actually think this is going to be a split decision type of fight, and I do like the value on Jay Herbert as the underdog. But in terms of making a pick, I'm going to pick Ľudovít Klein.
Yeah, as far as confidence, you got to be careful here because this is going to be likely a striking fight. 2 strikers are going into this fight here. Ľudovít Klein, I think, is the more technical guy as far as striking goes, but Jai Herbert has that reach, and if he has that reach, he's gonna be able to get to the spot pretty easy in this fight. So you can kind of dictate the fight with his reach if it's going to be a striking match. So it's closer than it looks here because Jai Herbert can definitely win this fight. He's going to be the bigger guy. It's going to be a striking fight on the feet, just like when Trizano fought Ľudovít Klein. We all thought Klein was going to win that fight, and Trizano came and showed up. So if Jai Herbert has a similar approach, moving around the ring, using his reach in this fight, giving him the 1-2s like Trizano was doing repeatedly, keeping up a high pace, he can definitely win this fight. And I think that reach is going to be a big thing here. But something I don't like about Jai Herbert is his chin. He can get flattened And I think it could happen here in this fight. I think Ľudovít Klein is the more durable guy. So that's why I'm going to go with Ľudovít Klein, because it's going to be a striking match. So I want to be on the side with the more durable guy. Plus, Ľudovít Klein, if he can take this to the mat, he's going to be the better grappler in this fight. He's going to have the better grappling, the better wrestling. So if he can get it to the mat, that's another avenue for him as well. So I'm going to go Ľudovít Klein here to get the win.
Third fight of our prelims, Joanne Wood versus Luana Carolina. For Joanne Wood, she's on a 3-fight losing streak. She lost to Alexa Grasso last year. Muay Thai kickboxing style, pretty diverse striker at that. Has that good Thai clinch as well. What I like about her is that she goes for it first often. She strikes first often. She strikes in combinations, has that leg-heavy approach to her game. She is a bit more of a technical point fighter at times. And again, just mixes up her striking really well. And again, like I said, I like that consistent pressure, that consistent pace that she comes forward with. Luana Carolina lost to Molly McCann last year. Of course, that spinning elbow finish for Molly McCann. Muay Thai style fighter. She's a slow starter. She's not the most active striker, but she does look good when she starts to put them together, when she starts to pick up her pace. She's a southpaw. She's going to use some switch stance, though. Fights pretty tall, even though she won't have the height advantage in this one. Fights from distance, uses a lot of kicks. Technique is not really the cleanest. The striking speed is not really the best. She's also not really the best at handling pressure. But what she is good at is, takedown defense, at least on paper, at 82%. She has been taken down 5 times in her last 3 fights. So despite the defense number, not really that good in actuality in terms of actually stopping the takedowns. I will say, though, if she is taken down, her guard is pretty solid. She won't take too much damage, and she is pretty durable cardio-wise. But just taking a look at this fight, you got to think Joanne Wood is in a pretty good spot here. I think there's good value on her, all things considered. We know that she needs the win. This is a steep decline in competition compared to her last several fights. I mean, Joanne Wood has taken on sort of the who's who in the division in her last 5-6 fights or so. So to get someone that's not even really on the radar in Luana Carolina is a bit of a gift for her, right? Both of these women are Thai kickboxers. Carolina will have the reach advantage, but other than that, I think Joanne Wood is more proven at this point. Of course, I mentioned the stiffer competition already. Carolina just doesn't really possess those threats that some of Joanne Wood's losses, some of those opponents possessed. I don't think Carolina has, again, the speed, the power, or any kind of advanced grappling or any kind of high IQ to be able to put Joanne Wood in any kind of danger, so to speak, unless Joanne Wood just looks really bad. But otherwise, I mean, I'm looking at Joanne Wood as some pretty good value here. I mean, I think, there should be levels to this, and Joanne Wood should be the higher level fighter. So Joanne Wood is going to be my pick here.
Yeah, this is a tough fight, another women's fight. You want to kind of be careful with these ones. This fight, like you said, man, Joanne Wood should be the better fighter. She's fought the better girls. She has good wins as well against Jessica I, Andrea Lee, Ariane Lipsky, who's looking really good lately. But again, she hasn't won a fight since 2021. Albeit she's fought Lauren Murphy after that. Talia Santo and Grasso, like those are really tough fights, of course. But she's gonna have a lot of pressure under herself. She's on a 3-fight losing streak. Her confidence must be really low, and I think this is a perfect spot for a fighter like Luana Carolina. As it's gonna be tough to make this pick, but I think Luana Carolina has value in this spot because I think she could move around. I don't like Joanne Wood's fighting style. She kind of just plods forward in straight lines. Like she doesn't really have much movement. But when I look at Luana Carolina, at least she's moving around the ring. At least she uses the space in the octagon, and she's going to be the longer fighter. I think she can outstrike her. I think she could put on not a heavy pace, but I think she can definitely put on a higher activity rate than Joanne Wood here. So I'm going to go with Luana Carolina. I think this is going to be a sticky fight. Can go either way, but I'm going to go with Luana. I like the odds, and I think that she can pull it out, moving around that ring, using the reach. throwing the more shots. It doesn't look pretty, but it is effective. And you got to remember, she has okay wins. Lupita Godinez. Lupita was going up in weight, so she was towering over Lupita. So that's I'm going to give Lupita the benefit there. But she has a win against Poliana Botello, Priscilla Cachoeira. These are pretty good wins, and Priscilla is looking pretty good. She got a knockout in her last fight. Botello's well-rounded. So I'm gonna go with Luana here to pull it out here and get a decision in this spot.
Fight number 4, let's look at Jake Hadley versus Malcolm Gordon. For Jake Hadley's submission victory over Carlos Candelario back in November. He's a southpaw, good pace, good regular jab. The boxing is pretty clean. Good technique, good striking speed as well. He's going to look to get in your face. He's going to look to close distance. I like his consistent pace as well. He has been susceptible to takedowns, but he has good jiu-jitsu. So he's pretty solid off of his back. He's a pretty solid submission threat. I've also seen some good offensive wrestling, right? The offensive part of the ground game, the wrestling, the takedowns. Although he's only landed 1 takedown in 3 UFC fights, he does have it in him. So don't quite be alarmed by the numbers in that case. He has great IQ on the ground in general, great IQ on top, good positioning, takes his time, position over submission type of fighter. And again, that last fight sort of speaks to that. But just a pretty well-rounded prospect here in Jake Hadley, going up against Malcolm Gordon, who lost to Muhammad Mokaev back in November. No fuss there. Kickboxing approach. He has a lot of power. He's going to fight at a high pace and come forward. Suspect takedown defense. Doesn't really do much off of his back. And that's sort of where the discrepancy in this fight is the biggest discrepancy in this fight for me. He is a BJJ black belt for what it's worth. And I have seen him, sort of improve his bottom game in his past few fights. Also 4 takedowns landed in 5 UFC fights. So it is something that he can include from time to time. He did land a takedown on Muhammad Mokaev, for example, which is pretty solid because Mokaev, good ground game, complete ground game, but that also comes with good takedown defense. Biggest red flag with Malcolm Gordon, his chin, super suspect. 4 of his 6 losses are via KO, TKO. And I think that aspect of this fight is actually the biggest contributor to how big of a favorite Jake Hadley is. We know Gordon is dangerous, at least early in the fight. High pace, forward pressure, good power. But at least to me, once the dust settles, Hadley is the higher level striker. Hadley is the better wrestler. Hadley may even be the better grappler, in addition to Hadley fighting at home. So just all the factors are putting me on the side of Jake Hadley for this one. I do acknowledge the early fight threat, or maybe even the round 1 threat that Malcolm Gordon can be. But I do think that Jake Hadley will be able to survive that, surpass that, and take over this fight as the fight goes on. So Jake Hadley, I think, gets it done in unanimous fashion.
Yeah, I think this is a sticky fight, man. Like Jake Hadley's a huge favorite. I think these odds, I don't think he should be that big of a favorite in this fight because I think if this fight stays grappling, like if the majority is grappling, Malcolm Gordon is super live. He's going to be the physically stronger guy in there, and I actually think Malcolm Gordon has the better jiu-jitsu. I think he has the better BJJ. I'll give the wrestling to Hadley, but again, with Malcolm's strength, he could come out here and he might be able to get some takedowns. But likely, Hadley should be able to avoid this getting to the mat. But if Hadley wants to play grappling with this guy, I think he can make this fight harder than it needs to be. I think on the feet, I think Hadley's boxing is more effective. I think he's able to dictate the fight with his boxing. I think he has the better chin. Gordon has been down. So I think Hadley's going to eventually connect, but I think he needs to avoid that grappling, stay clear of that, keep it on the feet, use the grappling for that reason, and outstrike him, get the win that way. So yeah, I got Hadley, but again, yeah, Gordon, I don't like the odds because Gordon does have a clear path here to win the fight. So, but Jake Hadley's my pick. Keep it on the feet, use that boxing.
Fight number 5. Let's look at Christian Duncan versus Duško Todorović. Christian Duncan is the newcomer. He's coming from Cage Warriors, making his debut. Former Cage Warriors middleweight champ. 5 of his 7 wins via KO, TKO, and you're looking at a wide arrangement of KOs: a spinning elbow, flying knee, a spinning back kick. So this is someone who's going to be very dynamic, almost Michel Pereira-ish. So look for that kind of style from him. He has good speed, has good continuous movement, uses his jab, uses the front kick really well. Again, he can be really explosive, hence that high KO rate. Decent ability to fight off takedowns as well. Looks like he knows how to work his way back up if he is taken down. That could be very relevant going up against Duško Todorović. He had a ground and pound win over Jordan Wright back in October. Todorović has a lot of forward movement with his striking, a lot of fakes and feints, a lot of level changes, decent combinations. His striking is pretty decent just in general. He does pick his spots pretty well. And he has the takedowns. He has the wrestling. What you'll notice with Duško, though, those takedown numbers are really discouraging. Just 1 takedown per fight, just 12% accuracy. One consistency that I'm noticing is that, it's almost as if he's not strong enough to land these takedowns, despite he's a really, decent wrestler and just not able to land those takedowns. If he's taken down, his defense is not the greatest. I mean, we saw what Jordan Wright was able to do, an entire round of top control against Duško. And for Duško, that cardio has been an issue for him as well. When I look at this fight, I mean, to me, it's very hard to predict. I think this fight goes in one of 2 ways. Either Christian Duncan is going to school Todorović on the feet, or Todorović is going to make it a long night for Christian Duncan with the chain wrestling, the top control, etc. That second outcome, I don't think that Todorović has the cardio to maintain that type of style over 3 rounds. Also, Duško, again, just doesn't have the greatest takedown accuracy. So that tells me he's going to have a hard time taking Christian Duncan down. Like I said, could be strength related, could be cardio related, could be both. I'm not exactly sure. I'm expecting to see a good first round for Duško, but I can't really see Todorović looking good for the entirety of that second round. Can't see him looking good for that third round either. Duncan has shown me that he can be dangerous late in fights. Duncan has also shown me that, with his dynamic striking, he can be effective. He can have good power. He has dangerous weapons. 2 of 3 losses for Duško Todorović have been via KO, TKO. So that tells me that Duncan can get the finish here. Duško has been, of course, a very frustrating person to bet on in his time in the UFC. So I definitely wouldn't trust him to be reliable against the dynamic striker who is, used to guys trying to take him down and game plans around that. I also wouldn't trust Duško Todorović's cardio at all. And, we've learned that Duško Todorović is just not the prospect we thought that he was. So I'm not even really rating the experience that he has. It doesn't seem like Vegas is either, because they have him as an underdog here. I'm not going to say put this on any ticket. Christian Duncan is a newcomer. Stay the heck away from this fight. But when I make a pick, there's no reason for me to go for Duško Todorović here. So I'm going to go with the newcomer Christian Duncan to remain undefeated.
Okay, Christian Duncan debut, Cage Warriors champ, middleweight champ, first fight. So yeah, it's tough always when it's their first fight and they're coming from an organization like Cage Warriors, because you're not really sure the level of this guy. You're not really sure because of the competition. It's not Bellator, it's not the PFL level. It's all the way down Cage Warriors. That's a little above, or that might be equal to LFA, or maybe a little above LFA. So it's the competition is going to be a big jump facing Duško. Duško is well rounded in a way. He can grapple. He does have okay striking, and he just has a style where he's not really great anywhere, but he's decent in each area. Duncan wants to keep it on the feet. This guy has real good power, good flying knee, good kicks, good boxing. He's going to be the much better striker in this spot, and he's also good at pulling feints out of these guys, and good at counter. So he's going to be the guy styling on the feet. He's going to be the bigger guy, the physically bigger guy in the fight. Duncan's 7-0, so he's relatively new, you would think, because 7-0, but he actually has 22 fights as an amateur, and he's fighting a lot of guys. He's fighting Eastern Europeans there. I'm sure they can grapple. So I think he's going to do enough to keep it on the feet, even if he does get taken down in that first round. People have taken him down, such as Will Curry. They have taken him down, but eventually he gets back to his feet, and they struggle getting more takedowns, and he lights them up. So I think the same thing could happen here. So I'm going to go with the newcomer here, Christian Leroy Duncan here. Keep it on the feet and outclass him with his stand up. I think he can get a knockout. Duško can get hurt. He has been hurt in fights, and I think Duncan has that touch of death power that can put him away.
All right, fight number 6, Lerone Murphy versus Gabriel Santos. For Lerone Murphy, hasn't fought since October 2021. He beat Makwan Amirkhani at that time. We know he's a dangerous striker. We know he's quick, explosive, technical, really good footwork and IQ as well. Essentially a high-level boxer, good in and out movement, good fakes and feints, good calf kick as well. His weak point is his takedown defense, just 36%. He's definitely prone to the takedown. Otherwise, you're looking at a pretty high-level striker here. For Gabriel Santos, on the other hand, undefeated Brazilian coming from LFA. Look for him to switch stance, look for a lot of fakes and feints, level changes as well coming from him. He likes that stalking pressure. He is patient in his setups, but in terms of his attack, he's looking for that explosive moment. Looking for that good power shot, that strong calf kick. Just a decent striker overall with what I'm seeing from Gabriel Santos. But let me keep this short. Not overly impressed with Gabriel Santos here. Especially making his debut against a quality fighter in Lerone Murphy. Santos' striking, to me, is not active enough. I think that Murphy is a much higher level striker. I think that Murphy will be able to avoid the power that Santos can provide. And to me, I mean, you see the Brazilian flag there. You got to assume he has that ability on the ground, and maybe he does. But most importantly, he's not enough of a takedown threat for me to be worried too much about that. Both of these guys prefer the fight on the feet. Lerone Murphy is better in that area. Lerone Murphy is going to be my pick.
Yeah, I'll be quick, man. I'm going to go Lerone Murphy here. I like Santos's grappling, his jiu-jitsu, but I think Murphy can do enough to keep it on the feet. Santos doesn't have the best wrestling, the best entries to get the takedowns, but I think he could get a takedown on Murphy, but he needs to get this to the mat. Versus Murphy, I think, can do enough to move around, keep it on the feet, use his footwork, and outclass him with his boxing. So I'm going to go Lerone Murphy here to get the win in this spot, but it could be a sticky fight. I think Santos could pull off the upset, but I got to go with Lerone Murphy at home.
Fight number 7, end of the early prelims. Let's move on to the regular prelims. We have Muhammad Mokaev versus Jafel Filho. Mokaev, mentioned it earlier, he had that armbar win over Malcolm Gordon back in October. He's a good striker, good footwork, good quick in and out movement, solid counter puncher. We know he can apply that pressure and pace on his opponents, and he's going to use that pressure and pace, of course, to lean into his wrestling ability. I mean, you look at the numbers there, they speak for themselves, almost 9 takedowns per fight, though a small sample size. Good wrestler, good ground and pound, good positional improvements. The takedown defense looks good as well. We know he's a high-level grappler specifically on top of that. The technique is cleaning itself up. He's still a very young fighter, so that technique is cleaning itself up on a fight-by-fight basis. And one thing I want to point out, I talked about Malcolm Gordon earlier. Took some good shots from Malcolm Gordon in that last fight. So I like that, what that shows for his chin. That's something that I didn't necessarily see tested until that moment. So that was sort of good to check that box. For Jafel Filho, UFC debut, coming from Dana White Contender Series. Filho is a solid striker, patient striker, likes the calf kick, likes the pressure. Not necessarily going to come with that forward pace per se, not really going to be the most active striker, but he does have solid combinations and he does have pretty decent striking IQ and striking diversity. Jafel Filho, high-level grappler. He can land those takedowns. He has good clinch work and control against the cage, and he's very patient in those positions as he tries to work the fight to the ground. On the ground, great at scrambling, great at reversing position. That's always going to make him a threat. Taking your back is always a threat. Submissions are always a threat with Jafel Filho as well. I'll be honest, Jafel Filho looks pretty solid overall. But this, to me, is just way too much of a debut for him. I think if the UFC wanted to give him someone a little easier, this is someone that would have been a big favorite versus maybe another newcomer. And then, potentially go on a 2-3-4 fight win streak in the UFC. But debuting against Muhammad Mokaev, just too much of a debut, right? I mean, more specifically, I'm looking at Mokaev's pace, Mokaev's activity. I'm looking at those two things as being a factor with the striking. I do think that Mokaev is the better wrestler of the two. And although Filho is a high-level grappler, so is Muhammad Mokaev, right? So I don't even want to necessarily say who's better in that area. Probably Filho, but Mokaev is a high-level grappler as well. So to me, Mokaev is ahead or equal in every aspect, in addition to Mokaev fighting at home, in addition to the UFC experience, in addition to being undefeated and being a young fighter and getting better in every fight. Muhammad Mokaev has to be my pick. Obviously, minus 900 is what you're going to get for a name like Muhammad Mokaev. This could be, a tough fight, but Muhammad Mokaev should come out with a W.
Yeah, man, this is you got to go Muhammad Mokaev because the UFC is trying to push this guy, get him into contender status, looking at him as a future champ, future contender. So they definitely want him to win, and they're in England. So if this is a close fight, the judges might pull out a trick here for Mokaev. But I do think this is a fight you got to stay away from as far as like throwing on parlays. Because when you see odds like this, you're thinking, yeah, this guy should be much better than the other guy, and the other guy should not really have many paths to win with odds like this. But Jafel Filho, like he has good wrestling. He has good wrestling. He has good jiu-jitsu. If Mokaev goes in for these takedowns and leaves his head out, Jafel's gonna try to get a guillotine. He's trying to finish these fights, and on the contender series, he showed that his cardio can hold up. Again, this is gonna be a different pace. Mokaev can put on a pace, but he does slow down. He does slow down if he can't get those takedowns, and he had issues getting takedowns against Charles Johnson. So if Jafel Filho can do enough to keep it on the feet for at least 2 rounds, the striking is where this could be a fight where the majority is striking. If Filho can thwart those takedown attempts, and on the feet, Jafel has power. I like his boxing. I like his boxing better than Mokaev's, but I do like Mokaev's movement in the ring, and I do like I like his footwork. I like his movement around the ring, his in and outs, and his entries for takedowns. But if you can't get this to the mat, this fight could get sticky and not look like such a huge favorite. I still like Mokaev, even if he can't get it to the fight to the mat, because I think that he can keep it close, get the judges nod, land a couple takedowns here and there, get some positional control time. But I think this could be a sticky fight. So I wouldn't put it on parlays, but Mokaev should get it done with the superior grappling, the overall wrestling that he does have. But you can't sleep on a Brazilian. You can't sleep on these black belts, right? So, but I'm gonna go Mokaev to get the win here.
Let's move on to fight number 8. We're looking at Sam Patterson versus Yanal Ashmoz. Patterson, 9-fight winning streak. He's making his debut coming from Dana White Contender Series. Tall fighter, long fighter, good movement, good footwork, good long jab, sneaky submissions as well, more specifically with the chokes. Look at his record there, 10-1, half of those wins via submission. No slouch by any means with his ground IQ, even his ability to fight off takedowns as well. But Sam Patterson, very much a striker, just poised overall as a fighter. Ashmoz, on the other hand, undefeated newcomer, last fought on the PFL. He's tough, he's scrappy, he's not afraid to engage, not afraid to take one to give one, has really good power, good wrestling too. He trains with a lot of trains with a lot of Russians, I should say. So, he can be effective on the ground. He has a good top game. He has good ground and pound as well. I'm looking at a pretty solid fight. I mean, both of these guys look like pretty decent newcomers. I think there is some value on, Ashmoz. Again, he can use his wrestling, good power threat with respect to the striking. But I think that Sam Patterson is the smarter pick here. His striking is a lot better from what I've seen. His takedown defense has shown me that he can be pretty solid. And his threat with the chokes, it could be a good defense mechanism against the takedowns that Ashmoz may attempt right? So in those clinch situations, grab the neck, threaten the neck, get Ashmoz off of you. So Sam Patterson, I mean, he has a big height advantage, a big reach advantage. I think he's going to use those for effective distance control, to keep this one standing and to win it on the feet. I am looking at Sam Patterson to get it done in this lightweight fight.
Yeah, this is a really low level fight. When you look at Yanal Ashmoz, yeah, he was on the PFL, but it was it's what is it called? The Challenger Series. It's the equivalent of the UFC Contender Series. So he hasn't really fought anyone. And if you look at his record, he's 6-0. He has he hasn't fought anyone. And the guy that 7-3 that he fought is now 7-5. And this 7-5 guy that he fought, now he's 7-5, has fought nobody as well. When you look at Patterson, you got to respect his opponents. Like this guy has, albeit it's in Cage Warriors. I'm sorry, in Brave CF, but he has wins against 14-1, 10-6, 18-6, 9-3. This guy has some good wins on his record. He has the more experience. I think that's going to matter in this fight. The submissions are going to be a way that you can end the fight early. But I do think that he's going to be able to keep it on the feet here and outstrike him. I think he can do enough on the feet to win that battle. I haven't been impressed with the footage from Yanal Ashmoz, and I think Patterson just shows me more. He shows me that he can finish these fights. He shows me that he's the more dangerous guy, and the reach he has is going to help him a lot here. So Sam Patterson, that's my pick in this spot.
Fight number 9. Let's look at Chris Duncan versus Omar Morales. Lightweight fight here. Chris Duncan making his debut. He fought on Dana White Contender Series back in August. He has good power. 7 of his 9 wins via KO TKO. Very explosive. He's going to put a lot into every shot, but stylistically relatively basic, right? He is effective with that style. He's going to march you down, not even necessarily at a high pace, but with continuous pressure. He is mostly a striker, but he does have some takedowns. He does have some wrestling as well. Obviously inflated numbers, but just the fact that he has a takedown average with takedown accuracy tells you that he can have that aspect to his game as well. Omar Morales, on the other hand, is on a 2-fight losing streak. He lost to Uros Medic back in May of last year. Solid overall fighter. He is getting up there in age now, 37 years old at this point. Morales is introduced as a striker. He's patient on the feet. He has good movement, good timing, good counter punching, good combinations. Pretty diverse in his attack. He picks his shots pretty well, and just good all around, right? He has the good clinch. He has a good takedown, though he doesn't land it often, but 100% takedown accuracy. So that tells you when it's there, it's something he will go for. Good overall fighter, like I mentioned, getting up there in age, like I mentioned. I don't think he's as durable as he once was. His last 2 losses now have been via finish. A few things about Morales that would make me a little bit nervous if I was betting on him. He has good pop in his punches, but only 2 of his 11 wins are via KO TKO, so doesn't quite have that power. And I know it was just in his last fight, and it was to a good striker, so it's not a trend by any means, but getting knocked out to Uros Medic at 35 years old at that time, that could be a sign of your chin wearing out, right? And what's tough about this fight is that Morales, to me, is probably the better fighter here. Has the UFC experience as well. And it wouldn't surprise me at all if Omar Morales just goes out there, he schools Chris Duncan, he shows that there's levels to this. That would not surprise me at all. But I think the odds are as close as they are for a reason. Something tells me that the toughness factor from Chris Duncan is going to play a role in this one. I can see Chris Duncan hurting Morales, or I can see Morales wearing out, just due to Duncan attempting some takedowns and just kind of wearing on him. Though there is no proof of Chris Duncan being a cardio machine, so this cannot be a confident pick by any means. My gut tells me that Chris Duncan is going to be able to outwork Omar Morales here. And we are going to see those signs of Omar Morales' age and him being on the decline. So I'm going with the newcomer. It's not a confident pick by any means, but Chris Duncan is going to be that pick.
Yeah, it's a close fight, as the odds definitely indicate here. I don't like with Chris Duncan. I don't like when he's striking. His hands are down. Like, this guy does not defend anything thrown his way. He has a really powerful low kick, heavy hands, but he kind of wings them. He's not technical at all to me. Seems like a barroom fighter. Like, he doesn't really have the technique. He doesn't have his hands up, hands are low, and he just marching forward so he can eat shots. And he has been dropped in that fight on the Contender Series. I think it was against Campbell, and he got brutally finished by Borshev on the other Contender Series show he was on. So this guy can definitely get finished here. I'm going to give Morales the benefit of the doubt because in his last fight, Euros Medic is seen as a striking specialist. He lost that fight to the guy that was the better striker. And then in his fight versus Jonathan Pierce, he fought a grappling specialist. When he fought Shane Young, he got the win there. Giga Chikade's another striking specialist that was better than him in that area. Gabriel Benitez, he won that fight. The Young Ma, he won that fight. Harvey Park in the Contender Series, he won that fight. Those are all good wins. So I'm going to go with Morales. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. He was fighting a tough opposition. And I think with the errors Duncan makes, I think Morales' style can kind of can take advantage of those spots with his counters, with his movement, with his footwork, with his low kicks. He has really good low kicks. He targets the exact same spot on the Contender Series. That's pretty much how he won the fight, which led to the finish, was landing those low kicks, and then the guy just couldn't really put any weight on it. Seconds later, he got finished. So Morales is more technical. I'm going to go with him one last time. He's old, but I'm just not impressed with Duncan doing what he does doing it now at the UFC level. So I'm not sure. So I'm going to go Morales here to get the win.
Fight number 10, final fight of our prelims. Pretty solid featherweight matchup here. Jack Shore versus Makwan Amirkhani. Jack Shore suffered his first professional defeat. Lost to Ricky Simone. That was back in July. We know he's a relentless wrestling type of fighter with good entries, good takedowns, good on top, good positioning, good chain wrestling, good submissions as well, specifically that rear naked choke. Good takedown defense, which will be relevant for this fight. The stand-up, more than serviceable. I wouldn't say it's amazing by any means, but he does fight well coming forward. The jab is good. The in and out movement is there. Decent calf kick as well. More importantly, he's pretty patient. He's pretty composed. And that is something that he's getting better at. Definitely has his moments on the feet at this point. Makwan Amirkhani lost to Jonathan Pierce back in July. Not really the most active hands, although his hands are, his striking is decent. He moves pretty well on the feet. He takes his time. The hands are pretty quick as well. He can be pretty dynamic in moments. He can diversify his striking as well. But with Makwan, the strength is in his takedowns, right? His ground game, his submissions, 17 professional wins, 12 of them are via submission. He's one of those fighters that are very tricky on the ground. But biggest red flag for Makwan Amirkhani is that cardio just can't really last, right? And look no further than the cardio. I think Jack Shore is a big favorite for a reason. Amirkhani is going to give you one competitive round. Either he's going to look decent on the feet or he's going to have a lot of grappling exchanges, but he's going to have nothing effective left in the tank for rounds 2 and for rounds 3. So, Jack Shore, look for him to win round 2, round 3, and Jack Shore may even still win the first round, right? So I think he's going to be able to avoid the danger. I think his IQ is there to contend against Makwan Amirkhani's biggest strength. And though Amirkhani is decent on the feet, not active enough, and once there is a bit of a tussle in that first round, he's completely going to gas out, and Jack Shore is going to take over. So Jack Shore is my pick. Pretty confident here.
Yeah, for Makwan to win, he's going to have to submit him in that first round because on the feet, he has a flying knee on Andy Ogle, ended with a ground and pound after. I'm sorry, with follow-up punches after. But aside from that, he has no knockouts with his hands. So he's going to have to, unless he can land another flying knee or something high risk, he's going to have to submit Jack to win the fight. And we know that Makwan only has that one round. Jack is so well-rounded. He's rounding out his game now with his striking, which is improving. But his grappling has always been his mainstay. And he's fighting a guy in Amir who has really good chokes. As far as the submission game goes, I noticed that he has really good chokes because he's known as a submission guy, Makwan. So Shore has to be careful going in because he's going to be trying to lock up that neck. But I think Shore's going to be ready for this. I think he's just better everywhere aside from even the jiu-jitsu. I think Jack Shore is actually better than him in getting the positional control, the dominant positions. I like Jack Shore here, man. I think he wins. One thing, I think that he's going up in weight, though. I think Jack Shore is moving up in weight. Like,
Yep.
what is this fight at? Lightweight?
So this is taking place, 145 featherweight division. Jack Shore's coming up from 135.
All right. So yeah, so it's a new division. So Jack Shore should actually have more cardio now. He was always a big bantamweight. So I think this is a good move here on his end. So I'm gonna go Jack Shore, get back in the win column here.
Let's move on to the main card. In that case, we have 5 fights overall, pretty solid main card. Fight number 1, we're looking at Marvin Vettori versus Roman Dolidze. Middleweight matchup here. Vettori had that unanimous decision loss to Robert Whittaker back in September. Good overall MMA game. He's a southpaw on the feet. He has good hands. He can land combinations. He's good at closing distance with that active jab hand. And the thing with Marvin Vettori, really good pressure fighter. So expect a lot of level changes from him. Expect fakes and feints. Expect that pressure to be consistent. Expect that forward pace to be consistent, like I mentioned. He has strong wrestling to go along with that. Almost 2 takedowns per fight, almost 45% from the accuracy side of things. If he gets you down, pretty good ground and pound, just pretty good overall control. And the takedown defense is pretty solid at 75%, which is going to be very relevant going up against Roman Dolidze, who's on a 4-fight winning streak now at this point. Had that very impressive win against Jack Hermansson back in December. His style, smothering wrestling, or maybe more so specifically, very dangerous grappling. We have questioned his IQ in the past. We have questioned his cardio tank in the past. He has looked solid throughout this winning streak, at least by way of IQ, if nothing else. He is improving every fight, right? Becoming more composed, better IQ, playing to his strengths more. He does have a decent jab. He can be explosive on the feet. He does possess good power. Half of his wins are via KO, TKO, including his last 3 fights. Probably not the cleanest technique, but again, that power is definitely there. In terms of the takedowns, over 2 per fight, over 50% accuracy, just 33% takedown defense, but he is a very dangerous grappler, like I mentioned, whether on top or whether on bottom. Great opportunity for Dolidze, right? I mean, 4-fight winning streak, beats Jack Hermansson to get into the top 10, and then all of a sudden he's taking on Vettori, who is 4th in the division. So he can definitely, really, really put himself at the top of the charts pretty quickly. On the side of Dolidze, you have to like that power that he has on the feet. You have to like that high-level ground game that he has against anyone. Again, we saw that in the Hermansson fight, and we know Hermansson's good on the ground. But I don't like his skill set against Marvin Vettori. Marvin Vettori, better on the feet. Marvin Vettori also is going to be able to implement that continuous pressure and pace that, it might even tire Dolidze out a bit more than anticipated, a bit more than his previous fights have. Vettori can also land the takedowns, but I don't think he's going to want anything to do with that. I think he's going to respect Dolidze's high-level grappling, especially after what he did to Jack Hermansson. Again, Jack Hermansson was somebody who did initiate takedowns in that fight, so I think Vettori will be able to learn from that. And I think Vettori's takedown defense is good enough to keep him out of harm's way, especially in that Dolidze isn't as relentless with his takedown attempts since kind of rounding out his skill set. So I'm almost looking for the rounding out of the skill set to work against Dolidze here, not be as relentless as a wrestler as he was early in his UFC career. Vettori being able to fight off most of those takedown attempts. Vettori having that pressure on the feet, Vettori being better on the feet, and then once Dolidze gasses out, the fight is over. So I'm looking at Marvin Vettori to get it done. Pretty decent odds, but I will say pretty dangerous because Dolidze is a dangerous opponent. But again, Marvin Vettori will be my pick.
Yeah, I'm thinking that a big factor in this fight is whose cardio is going to hold up in this fight, because both of these guys have shown that they're hard to put away. They're hard to. It's really hard to finish Vettori. It's really hard to finish Dolidze. These are two of the bigger middleweights in the UFC. Really good chins. So I think it's going to come down to who slows down and who picks up the pace as the fight goes on, that second, third round. I got to go Vettori. Again, I think Dolidze is super live because he has that X factor with the submissions, that he's on another level if he gets your legs. If he can easily, not easily, but he can look for a leg lock and then eventually submit you that way. He has really good leg locks, and that's a dangerous thing to have in UFC, in MMA. If you have good leg locks, look at Ryan Hall. He made a career out of just getting people's legs. Dolidze has that same danger in this division. Not as good as Ryan, but obviously he knows how to do the same thing. And if Vettori plays around with the grappling, he's putting himself in danger. Dolidze just needs one leg lock, and then he'll twist your knee off, and the fight's over. So Marvin needs to just keep it on the feet, survive that first round. And I think as the fight goes on, Vettori has shown that he has the better cardio. He should be the one that would be pushing the pace in the second round, holding the center of the octagon, landing jabs, landing his boxing. So I'm going to go Marvin Vettori here, but I think it's a tricky fight. It's a tough fight because Dolidze has that X factor. He has those leg locks. He has an overall good grappling game, but the leg locks is something I really keyed in on. And I think that in a fight against Vettori, if he gets that leg, it could be seconds from being finished. But I'm going to go Vettori, keep it on the feet. He has good coaches. He has a good team around him. They should have the game plan, get it to the second, third round, and win a decision.
All right, second fight of our main card, Jennifer Maia versus Casey O'Neill. Pretty solid flyweight fight for the women here. Maia's on a one-fight winning streak. She had a unanimous decision win over Moroz, I should say, back in November. She's introduced as a Muay Thai kickboxer, has decent boxing technique, has good hands and good power. She's not afraid to engage by any means. She's physically strong. She's tough. Good clinch game, good knees in the clinch. The ground game is there as well. Although the takedown numbers wouldn't quite suggest that. Decent control on top, active enough in the ground and pound. Doesn't really have the best takedown defense, but she is active off of her back. She can work her way back up. And, her cardio holds up as well. So just a decent overall fighter. But there are some holes to her game that Casey O'Neill can capitalize on. Casey O'Neill had that split decision win over Roxanne Modafferi. That was in February of last year, so it's been just over a year since her last fight. She has good MMA striking. She does train out of Thailand, so that'll speak to that MMA striking ability. She has decent hands, decent kicks, a constant pressure, a constant pace. I wouldn't say her striking is high level per se, but she is dynamic. She is effective. She has a good jab. And with her game, it's also well-rounded. She has the ground game. She has the wrestling. Pretty good on top. She smothers her opponents with her ground and pound. Good from the bottom as well. Just a very solid clinch and just a very composed fighter overall. For this fight, Jennifer Maia has shown me that, in general, she's not that gatekeeper. She's not in that role yet for this next wave of fighters, right? She's still very much competing at a high level. And I think this is a very close fight. There are reasons to like both fighters. I think the striking can be fairly even. Maybe Maia can also be ahead in that situation. Cardio can also be a key advantage for Jennifer Maia. O'Neill does slow down a bit. Look no further than the takedown numbers, though, in my opinion. I think Casey O'Neill has the ability to resort to the takedowns as part of her game plan. And we know that Maia can't really defend them. Despite not taking too much damage when she's on the ground, she's still going to give up the takedowns, which will potentially cost her. Even with the striking, O'Neill goes at a higher pace. And I think that could be another factor in putting rounds in her favor. A Jennifer Maia win would not surprise me. I mentioned this on the prelims. It could be one of those situations where it's levels, right? Maia has been in the higher level of the women's flyweight division for a while. Casey O'Neill is making her way into that atmosphere. And like I said, Maia's not quite the gatekeeper yet. So a Maia win would not surprise me in any way. I would be very careful betting this, but I do think that Casey O'Neill is going to be able to get the biggest win of her career as a result of this fight. The higher pace on the feet, if she's facing problems, resort to the takedowns, have some ground control time, secure rounds in that way. I think Casey O'Neill will be able to do that. So Casey O'Neill is going to be my pick, but I'd be careful betting on this one.
No, I think Casey gets it. I think Casey gets it done, man. She impressed me. I think she's someone to look at in this division. She's a big flyweight as well. So she does have some size to her. And in this fight, her activity is going to be a big thing. She throws a lot of shots. She mixes in her game, and she improves each fight. So she's definitely getting better. She's only 25, and I like her chances of getting a trip at some point, getting a takedown, playing it safe, getting a decision here. But I think she runs away with this one. I think she's just I think she has a lot of potential, and I think she's catching Maia at a good time. Maia's 34. She doesn't seem to have a second gear in these fights. She kind of just there's times where I think she can push for takedowns against fighters where she clearly has that advantage, and she doesn't do it, right. So I like Casey O'Neill, man. I like her IQ. I think she gets it done here with the activity on the feet.
Fight number 3, let's look at Gunnar Nelson versus Bryan Barberena. Nelson had that unanimous decision win over Takashi Sato. That was last year, right around this time. He's a well-rounded fighter, has that signature karate-esque style on the feet. We know that's going to make him pretty quick, kind of Wonder Boy-ish at times with his striking. But he's also very inactive at times with his striking, almost as if he's looking for that perfect shot or that perfect counter rather than just sort of setting things up. But again, like I said, well-rounded fighter. He has the ability to land the takedowns. We see a high takedown accuracy number there at 60% and almost 2 takedowns per fight to go with that. He will have that sort of chain wrestling approach a bit, and he has the grappling knowledge as well, right? He is somebody, though, that can be outworked, outpaced, overwhelmed. That's something that we've seen from his losses, and that's where you'll see a little bit of value on a Bryan Barberena, because Bryan Barberena has that work, that pacing, that pressure, etc. We know he lost to RDA back in December. We know he's introduced as a striker. He is a southpaw. You are going to see decent in and out movement from him, decent fake jabs, set things up, that type of approach. But again, Bryan Barberena, kind of just one of those tough guys, more toughness than skill. Wouldn't really call him a high level striker by any means. But like I said, that work rate, that toughness, those are probably the biggest factors of his game. The biggest weakness of his game, takedown defense, 54%. And that alone is going to make me like Gunnar Nelson here, right? The overall MMA game of Gunnar Nelson is too advantageous. Bryan Barberena gave up 4 takedowns to Rafael dos Anjos, and I'm expecting the same type of fight here, right? Takedowns, ground control, control time. I can see Gunnar fighting a smart fight. Not even really worrying too much about entertaining the fans, just capitalizing on Barberena's weaknesses and avoiding Barberena's strengths, which could be weaknesses for him. Again, the pressure, the pace, etc. Gunnar, I don't want to say better striker. I'll say, quicker striking, potentially more effective striking, potentially more diverse striking. Barberena's toughness could give him some trouble. But I do think, again, Gunnar Nelson should IQ pretty well, should game plan for this pretty well with his IQ, get it done, use the ground game to his advantage, and secure the win here.
Yeah, 100%, man. I like Gunnar Nelson as well. Again, you mentioned Dos Anjos getting 4 takedowns against him, and that was in a round in 3 minutes. He gave up 5 takedowns to Matt Brown. He gave up 4 takedowns to Darian Weeks, 8 takedowns to Jason Witt, 5 takedowns to Anthony Ivy. This guy doesn't really have the takedown defense, and we know Gunnar Nelson, good ground game. He's going to want to get it to the mat, and he's looking to finish. In his last fight, Gunnar Nelson faced Takashi Sato, who as well didn't have much to stop the takedowns, and Gunnar was able to do that for 3 rounds. So I think he can do the same here. I think he can do the same. I think he can even get the submission here in this spot. I like him. I like him a lot here, man. I think Gunnar Nelson wins this fight with that wrestling approach.
Co-main event of the evening in that case, let's look at Justin Gaethje versus Rafael Fiziev. A very exciting lightweight matchup. Two top contenders here. Justin Gaethje, his last fight, Charles Oliveira, of course. He lost that fight. That was back in May. He keeps the fight on the feet. High level of activity. He moves well laterally. Good high level striking. Good striking IQ. Good usage of leg kicks. Good in and out. Good in and out movement, I should say. Good accuracy on his shots specifically, and he can really put the combinations together. His timing on his counters are really good. Of course, Justin Gaethje's downfall is that he takes as much as he gives. Very tough. Usually finds himself in a firefight. Sometimes finds himself on the losing end of that firefight. So, kind of gets in those situations that you want to potentially avoid. But nonetheless, going up against Rafael Fiziev, different style of striker here. 6-fight winning streak. He beat RDA back in July. He has really great MMA stand-up, high-level kickboxing, high-level boxing, high-level powerful leg kick to the body, good head movement, good combinations. Definitely one of the best strikers in the UFC right now. Good ground game as well, despite the numbers. Very high IQ in that area. Good top position, activity, positioning. He can, control you on the ground. But the ground stats won't matter in this fight, so I won't extend too much on that. I think this fight will remain standing. And again, like I said, very interesting clash of styles. We know Fiziev is the more technically pure striker here. We know that he's the more technically capable striker here. We know that Justin Gaethje has that toughness, that in your face, that force you to engage, that prove that you can take it as much as you can give it. We know that he's going to make it a fight, right? We know that Gaethje has nasty power, and we have seen Fiziev lose via TKO before, although it was a head kick. Fiziev is a slow starter, and Gaethje can come out with fireworks, right? Either way, elite fighter. Justin Gaethje, very dangerous, especially in a 3-round fight. I'd be worried about those factors if I was betting on Fiziev in this one. And I definitely think that Gaethje has a ton of value as an underdog. But that said, Rafael Fiziev, like I said, the better striker when it's all said and done. I think that he should be able to pick up on Gaethje's timing. I think he should be able to capitalize on Gaethje's mistakes. You look at RDA versus Fiziev, for example. RDA didn't give him, many moments on the feet. RDA did a lot of clinching in that fight. He kept the fight close. Fiziev was still able to eventually, find that timing and find that 5th-round finish. So I like Fiziev here. Again, Gaethje presents a more straightforward challenge that plays right into Fiziev's primary skill set, which is that striking. So I think he will be able to capitalize. Justin Gaethje will miss something big. Fiziev will catch him, potentially hurt him. I'm looking at Fiziev to get the win here.
Yeah, man. Justin's always live in any fight that's going to be mainly on the feet. And in this fight, we know it's staying on the feet. For sure, if anyone goes for takedowns, might be Justin. But yeah, Justin doesn't go that route, right? So I see Justin, if he lands a couple of those leg kicks, it's not going to look good for Fiziev. Justin can definitely win this fight, man. He can land that heavy shot. He's not technical compared to Fiziev. It's not even close. Fiziev is the far superior guy as far as technical striking. But with technical striking, it's those wild guys like Gaethje that catch them off guard because they throw. They have that different style that these technique guys are not really that used to sometimes. So I think Gaethje can definitely land that shot. But I just think that Fiziev here, man, he's looking really good, and on the feet, he's looking pretty much unstoppable. Aside from the fight against Bobby Green, but every other guy on the feet, it looks like he's on another level. And also aside from that, Magomed Mustafayev, that spinning back kick he got in that fight. But yeah, he looks really good on the feet. He's on a good win streak right now. But what made me go with Fiziev was when Gaethje got knocked out by Charles Oliveira. He made a comment to the media, something along the lines that I never felt that power before in my life. Like I never felt it was different. Like the heaviest shot, I can't believe it. Maybe Gaethje's feeling it now because this guy has taken many shots, heavy shots from many fighters. I wouldn't think that Charles was the heaviest guy that landed a shot on him. But just maybe he just can't take these shots like he used to. It happens to a lot of these guys that are not defensive, that take heavy shots, like a Chuck Liddell. So I'm gonna go with Fiziev, just being the better striker, avoiding the damage from the leg kicks, avoiding the heavy running, and I think he can just like piece him up, just outstrike him. He might even get a finish because again, I'm not sure Justin Chin is still there. The way he was flatlined by Charles, and then he came out and said that this is the heaviest punch he's ever faced in his life. So I'm gonna go with Rafael Fiziev to school on the feet.
All right, let's get to our main events of the evening. Leon Edwards versus Kamaru Usman. I'll be honest, I don't need to spend too much time here. I'll get right to the point. I think I saw everything I needed to see in that last fight. We know that Leon had a competitive round one. In fact, he landed the only takedown that Usman has ever given up. Though Colby will argue differently for that. But outside of that, I mean, it was Usman's fight until the last minute, right? I don't think Usman makes the same mistake. I don't think Usman is going to allow that to happen. I think he's going to be sharper than he was in their last fight. And on the flip side, I feel like Leon had his moment. You know, I feel like he has seen the media glory, especially in the UK, in a way that he has never seen before. And it's not to say that he won't be focused, but I just don't see him having that Hail Mary moment again. Outside of that Hail Mary moment, didn't really show me anything in that second fight to make me believe that he can game plan to win this one. So I'm looking at Kamaru Usman to get his belt back on this one. I'll get right to the point. I'll keep it short. Kamaru Usman's my pick.
Yeah, so this is the first fight. I picked Leon Edwards, and I was surprised when he got that finish when I was watching that fight. Great fight. I just felt at that point that somehow Leon's going to get it done because on paper I thought Kamaru should win the fight, but something was telling me that it's Leon's time, right? So it worked out in that fight. In this fight, after looking at the first fight, I was able to kind of make a good decision on this one. You have to look at that first fight when they both had full cardio in that first round. Leon won that first round. They were at higher elevation, so Kamaru's used to that elevation where he trains at. Edwards was a big difference for him, so they're saying that he had a bigger hit with that elevation in that first fight, which is why he gassed so fast in that fight. But I think the issue in this fight for Edwards is Kamaru's going to come out with the pace, because that's his calling card. He has a really high pace, really good cardio, and he can wrestle for 4 or 5 rounds. I'm not sure why the last fight he decided to keep it on the feet for the last couple minutes. But he could have easily tied him up, held him against the cage, or even got another takedown. Leon wasn't really defending the takedowns at that point. Like he wasn't really doing much to avoid the clinch with Kamaru. I think Kamaru's pace, his cardio is gonna be the big thing in this fight, unless Leon catches him early. Like he lands a heavy shot early. I see Kamaru just draining him out. I don't think he's going to make the same mistake twice in the later rounds if he has the fight in the bag. I think he's going to use his IQ more. I think he knows the danger now with Leon Edwards. I think he's going to outpace him. After that first round, it could be close. It could be back and forth. But I could see Usman piling on that pressure and maybe break Leon as the fight goes on. But I do like Usman in the rematch. I think he gets his title back. He gets his respect back in the rankings. I think he wins this one.
All right, let's take it to Vegas at that point, and let's consider some underdog action. Let's consider some parlay action as well. Of course, starting with the underdogs, I will read them out. Veronica Macedo is an underdog. Jay Herbert is an underdog. Luana Carolina, Malcolm Gordon, Duško Todorović, Gabriel Santos, Jafel Filho, Yanal Ashmoz. Chris Duncan is a slight underdog versus Omar Morales. Makwan Amirkhani, Roman Dolidze, Jennifer Maia, Bryan Barberena, Justin Gaethje, and Leon Edwards.
Yeah, I think Dolidze is great value there, but my underdog pick is Luana Carolina.
Luana Carolina, who also has pretty good underdog odds there. Luana Carolina. My underdog pick is going to be Chris Duncan, kind of an even money option there in some ways, a slight underdog. And in terms of some parlay action, who are you taking a look at?
All right, if you have yours.
Yeah, I do.
Okay,
I do. So let me get that. That one I would go with Jake Hadley. I would go with Jack Shore. I would go with Lerone Murphy. I was going to include Muhammad Mokaev on that, but at a 14% bump, I just don't want to take that risk. So I'm going to leave it at those three. Jack Shore, Lerone Murphy, Jake Hadley. 2.35, $100 will get you $235. For our bigger bettors, $250 will get you $589.
All right, I'm going to go with Kamaru Usman, Rafael Fiziev, and Gunnar Nelson.
Gotta love a main card play. So that's Usman, Fiziev, and Nelson. Those three would be 2.57. Thus, $100 will get you $257 in total. For our bigger bettors, $250 will get you $643. Let's sign off on that note. Definitely an exciting pay-per-view event here. UFC 286, Kamaru Usman versus Leon Edwards 3. Please make sure you subscribe to the channel here at Boxing MMA Picks. Please make sure you hit the thumbs up on this video as well. And most importantly, we want to hear from you in the comments. How do you feel about our picks? What are your picks? Who's your underdog? Who is your favorites? What are you looking at on a parlay? Or if you want additional insight, we're more than happy to have those conversations in the comments as well. Again, make sure you hit the thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. We would definitely appreciate all of that. In the meantime, let's officially sign off. UFC 286, Leon Edwards versus Kamaru Usman 3. I go by the name of Harris. He goes by Zan. We are Boxing MMA Picks. And in our usual fashion, let's get this money.
Let's do it.